Welcome to the SOB radio show, where we have fun, interesting guests, and hot topics. Each week, we offer insights into music, fashion, health, fitness, and humor. Do you have the perfect guest for us to interview? I want to know. Drop me a line on our Facebook page at Spunky Old Broad 1 or reach out to me on our website at spunkyoldbroad.com. And now, back to the show.
I am really excited to talk to our guest today because she has written this wonderful book called Who Will Take Care of Me When I'm Old? So everybody listening to this probably is interested in what she has to say. Her name is Joy Loverde, and she is the author of the bestseller, The Complete Elder Care Planner. But her latest one is the one I just mentioned, Who Will Take Care of Me When I'm Old? She's known as a thought leader in the field of aging, media interviews that include the Today Show, National Public Radio, and the Wall Street Journal, among many others. She's a popular keynote speaker and serves as a consultant to professionals who offer products and services to the mature market. Welcome, Joy.
Thank you so much. I'm so looking forward to talking with you. You have done amazing things as well.
Oh, well, thank you, Joy. But, I have to ask you, what was the inspiration for writing this book?
Well, for the past 30 years, I have been on the road talking to caregivers because of my first book. But about 10 years ago, something very interesting started to happen. So whenever I was finished with a speech or an interview, people would say to me, I am doing this for my loved ones and my parents, but who's going to take care of me and do this for me when I'm old? Oh, I knew right away, 10 years ago, that would be my next book. However, 10 years ago was way too soon to let the cat out of the bag. I needed to let people get more comfortable in the caregiving role before I would say, and guess what? We're next.
Yeah, it's so funny because my son said that to my daughter not too long ago. She was asking for some money, and he was saying, I'm not in a position to do this now. I have no children. My son is gay, so he has a husband. He said, we're not going to have kids. So, and that's what he said. Who's going to take care of us in our old age? We're trying to plan for it now, but who knows what's going to happen in the next 10 to 15 years. And so, and he said to her, you've got 3 adults living where you are, and you ought to be able to figure it out. And I thought, isn't that interesting that he's thinking about who's going to take care of him when he is older, when he has been a great source of support for me. And when I said to him, I don't want to be a burden to you, he said to me, Mom, it is a privilege. And I thought, wow, how many kids say that to their parents? It's a privilege to take care of you. Not that he does take care of me. I mean, he helps me mentally and emotionally and all of the other ways. But, I'm very fortunate to have that in my life. But you also make a point of saying that making friends in later life and creating a support network is not the easiest thing to do. So talk about that a little bit.
Well, there are certain criteria we need to look for when we do create relationships. First of all, they're not just friends when we get older. We become lifelines for each other, don't we? They're more readily accessible than our children. So having friends is one thing, creating trust between you is another. So there's a section in my book that I talk about, are you a trustworthy friend? Because that's the beginning of creating the kind of relationship where a friend will be there for you when you need them. Another thing that we can do right away is to immerse ourselves in a system that will allow us to be introduced to younger friends. I, for example, am a member of an organization called the Transition Network, and this network is women 50 and older. So if I'm a member of this organization and I participate all the time, I will continuously be meeting people who will be younger than me, and possibly I can start that relationship early on. I'm not counting. I have a daughter. She and I was a single mom. We're as close as can be. But she has her own life, and I'm not counting on her to really being able. She may want to, but she may not be able to take care of me. I have to think ahead.
Well, you're right. I mean, my daughter lives in Alabama, my son lives in California, and I'm in Florida. Now, normally I would be in California part of the time, but with all the
Mhm.
restrictions now in my particular situation, I can't do that. But it's interesting what you're talking about because I have friends everywhere, but they're again not near me. But there is a woman in my building who I met going to the gym that's in our building, and we've just always said hello, how are you, talked, etc. She has like taken taken my care over. This morning, she texted me and said, "Are you up yet? I have your BLT because I had said I was dying for a BLT sandwich. I have your BLT ready for breakfast. Are you up?" And so I was up and I went down in my bathrobe to her apartment and she gave me my BLT, and she also cooked me a cheeseburger for lunch. And then I have another woman who at the end of the hall, I have talked about here before. I knew her not at all, but for some reason I always kind of said hello because she has a dog, so I always said hello to the
Oh,
dog.
yeah.
And when it first started and I opened up my door, there were 24 rolls of toilet paper, all kinds of
Oh,
gloves, disinfectant, and I really did not know her. So it's interesting how people, you attach them to yourself and vice versa. But you also say that you have customable checklists and worksheets. And do people use these?
oh, absolutely. Because some of us have that kind of brain, like we like checklists, check it off, right? And as a matter of fact, I'm glad you mentioned that because they are available on the website, on my website. So they're downloadable and customizable. But yes, some people like different kinds of worksheets. Others just wing it, but with a goal in mind.
Interesting, interesting. So what would be on a worksheet, for example?
Well, let's see. The book has some for decision making. For example, how do we know what to do? What's the process of making a good decision? Well, that's one worksheet. Another worksheet that's in the book has to do with making where we live age friendly. And that includes not only the interior, but the exterior. It's one thing to have a grab bar in the bathroom and make sure we don't have any steps and all that. But what happens when we walk out the door? Are we living in a community that is friendly to people of all ages? Let's say you need to get a job or you want a job. Will they make employee opportunities available to you where you live? We really have to look at this aging in place on a lot of different scales. Those are the kinds of worksheets. It like eliminates the wonder, have I thought of everything?
It's interesting you talk about the job thing because I know people are concerned about money now. And of course, there aren't a whole lot of extra jobs to go around. But when I was doing TV appearances, which of course I have not done in the last many months, my topic was the 3 worst mistakes to make when trying to start a second career. And I would talk about those things because, when you are either unemployed because you've been let go, or you've retired and found out retirement is not exactly what you thought it was going to be, and you want to go back and get something to do, there's a lot of mistakes you make. So what about the person who is older who is now facing money issues because maybe all they had was their Social Security, and maybe they had a part-time job that's gone away because let's face it, those are the jobs that were disappearing first.
Well, you mentioned something very, very important, Gail. When people ask me what's the first thing I need to do, I always say you've got to address financing a longer life. So you asked me about people who are already taking a look from a rather reactive position rather than a proactive position. Hopefully they have considered long-term care insurance, but a lot of people can't afford it once they get to a certain point or if they have health conditions. this is the time, and you saw in my book there, one of the most fun sections that I wrote in the money chapter is how to get a bunch of stuff for free. So,
That's
and
the best. That's the best.
I know, and people don't realize this. So you just Google free, and then possibly put the name of your city or your town, and watch what pops up. It's amazing.
That's so interesting. You know, I did start out with Meals on Wheels because I don't cook. And then I started getting, you know, they were the same meals over and over and over again. So I started, of course, with Instacart, and I had my groceries delivered. Now I'm ordering from food delivery services. I'm on my second one. I'm not thrilled so far with either one of the ones I've tried, but the social worker at the hospital that I go to gave me the name of three, so I'm going to try each of them. But it's interesting because I think there are a lot of things that are available that seniors just don't think about, and yet there's a lot of people that don't even know that they exist. I mean, and they don't know how to find them. So you're saying, what do you do though? Let's say I'm 60, 70 years old. I'm not computer literate, which could happen. And I can't use the internet because either I live in an area that doesn't have internet, or I don't have a tablet or a computer. Or, I mean, it sounds unbelievable, but certainly watching the media today, there are lots of people who don't have it. What do you do in those circumstances?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked that. This is not uncommon for people who live in rural communities. They have no bandwidth, they have no Wi-Fi. The good old-fashioned telephone, however, pretty much works everywhere. So don't forget that picking up the phone and calling your local area agency on aging, and they can mail to you a list of all the available services. But that's not the only place we can get information. Typically places of worship like churches and temples and any parish, any place where there might even be a spiritual or religious group. There are plenty of volunteers to help. Senior centers, great, incredible resource for everything you need under the sun for the older person. So we don't need a computer. I mean, we didn't do this 20 years ago on the computer, and we don't have to do it like that today. We need people around us to help us. And I'm a fan for picking up the phone and saying, hey, what did you do to get help? That's how I found out. I know that you probably read that most of the tips in my book came from the people, my old friends, people who are 30 years older than me. And I said, how are you doing? How'd you do this? How come, you're living on Social Security and you get to go to the opera every week? How are you able to do that? Well, many communities have special programs. People hop on a bus, at least before COVID anyway, and they would take them places. Nowadays, they're doing other things like talking on the telephone with each other.
Yeah, it's really interesting, how we used to live and how we're living now. But you're talking about younger people. My computer crashed, and of course, I don't know anything about computers except what I need to know. And I have a neighbor, he's a young guy, maybe, I don't know, maybe in his late 30s, early 40s, two young kids, his wife just had a baby. And he ordered my computer for me, set it up for me. I ordered a gaming chair because my back was so bad from being on the computer so long, and it hasn't had any problems since I got this gaming chair, but it comes in a big box with directions I would never be able to understand. And he came and he put a whole thing together for me. So I have these younger people who are also looking out for me in a lot of different ways. So it's true. But I think, again, Joy, it goes back to, I'm a friendly person. Mm-hmm. So I talk to everybody I meet. I mean, I meet a stranger in the elevator, and by the way, we're only allowed 2 people in my elevator. And I always say hi or smile, or sometimes I say, where's your mask? But, so it's easier for me to make friends. But there are older people who are introverted, as you mentioned, or withdrawn, or aren't used to being in a social circles, like I've always been around people. So I think it makes it more difficult for them to really live. And you talk about, planning for living in communities and neighborhoods that are important for you and living in place. And you mentioned things like the LGBTQ friendly and dementia friendly communities. So talk a little about all of this to us.
Well, the LGBTQ community is very close to my heart, as I know it is to you. I'm working right now with the Stonewall NYC .org, which is a virtual gay community that is attached to the bricks and mortar village. So LGBTQ virtual villages are the way to go if you want to be connected with like-minded people who can help you navigate the services and the resources that have been trained especially for this population. And I just want everybody to know they are not alone. And if they go to stonewallnyc.org as a way to begin the process of learning about an immense world that is available to you. It does take homework, Gayle, but it helps when somebody says, hey, did you hear about this or that? So the LGBTQ community can have a lot of resources. And if you know, we call them gray gays. If you know an older person who is not computer literate, you could befriend them and help them. I'm hearing incredibly wonderful stories about older gay people who are living alone, and the younger ones are meeting each other online. And in some cases, they're beginning the process of doing shared housing as a result of these relationships. It's wonderful what can happen. Virtually we meet, but eventually we find ways to be together. And this is the really important thing. An age-friendly community does not mean that it is friendly just to the older population, but an age-friendly community is friendly to every generation. So we might see teenagers on a government or a city board sitting there and telling us what they need. We need to include everybody in the age-friendly concept.
That's really interesting because, yeah, when people talk about age-friendly, you would normally think of it as older, not necessarily younger. So that is, that's a really important area as well.
I'll tell you something funny. Once you become more familiar with age-friendly, you'll never say, oh, he or she is just going through the terrible twos.
Yeah, well, that's true. You do hear that all the time,
Right.
Oh my gosh, they just became a teenager, or oh, she went into that preteen stage,
Exactly. We need to find out how they do that.
Exactly. Yeah, it's so interesting because when I look at somebody and I'm ready to make a judgment, let's put it like that, and I think, okay, what would the 13-year-old Gayle have done, or what would the 20-year-old Gayle? And I mean, we have done some crazy things. I'm sure you did too, Joy, in the past.
Oh, yes.
Said, oh my gosh, that we wouldn't tell our parents about. And yet, if our kids did that, we probably want to just bang them one, So it's interesting how we change as we age and as we go through more experiences. But you say there are some essential questions that you need to ask professionals. So first of all, who are the pros? And second of all, what kind of questions are you talking about?
Okay, so the pros are, and as I mentioned earlier, money is number one on our list, or should be. So we need to have in our back pocket a certified financial planner. We need to have in our pocket an elder law attorney. And we also need to, the third expert is one most people don't think about, and that is investigating the possibility that one day we may need to relocate from where we're presently living. So an aging life plan expert is a person formerly known as a geriatric case manager. So these are people who see the big picture of aging and can help guide us now on what we need to do to plan ahead. So those are the pros. We got the money pro, the legal pro, and the housing pro. From there, when we are considering hiring someone to be in our fold and they give us wonderful advice, the one question no one typically wants to ask or does ask is the one about the possibility that we may not be, we may develop cognitive problems and not know it. So what we need to do is ask the financial planner and the legal advisor, what can we create together? What kind of agreement can we create together that will allow you to address the possibility that I may be coming down with some kind of cognitive need that I'm not aware of? How should we proceed from here? Every professional advisor is going to give us a different perspective, but we've got to ask the question.
Yeah, it's true. When you think about dementia and Alzheimer's, and no one wants to think about it. I have friends who have MS, Parkinson's. I mean, these are things that you just don't believe you're ever going to be a victim to, but you are, and you've got to learn how to deal with it, and you've got to learn how to get the right people in your life. We have just a few minutes left in this segment, Joy, but I've got to comment that I'm not sure. I would say, I don't even want to guess, less than 20 or 10% of our population have those three people in their lives: a certified financial planner, because most people don't even have one of those; an elder care attorney. They may have an attorney that they've had for particular reasons, but not necessarily elder care. And then the case manager, I would think they'd have maybe more of that person, only because of insurance or HMOs or just life in general than anything. But very few people that I know have all of those three people in their life.
That's my job, Gayle. To tell them to go out and start hunting.
Yeah, definitely. We definitely need you for something like that. It's really interesting because I'm fortunate. Well, for example, I certainly had a will. My husband and I had a will, and it was between the two of us. So when he passed away 12 years ago, it was just easy for me because everything, went to me, and there was no probate or anything like that. But now that I'm alone and there are circumstances, my son said to me, "Okay, Mom, you're going to get a living will. You're going to do an estate plan." And you're going to and he took me, and he went, and he had everything done, and I trust him. I truly trust him, Joy. Mm-hmm. And I went, when I was out to California, we signed everything, and he showed me where everything was. He said, if anything happens to me, this is where my documents are. If anything happens to you, I know where your documents are. I mean, I'm blessed to have that kind of a son, so I'm very fortunate there. But I just think of all the people who don't have someone like that in their life. I mean, it's just got to be really difficult for them.
This is where we can be role models. Instead of telling them, I mean, it's one thing that your son is so fabulous and so proactive, but we don't expect our friends to do the same. Like, Gayle, you really need to get your act together. We don't do that. However, we can be influencers, and we could say, hey, guess what I just did? And here's why I did it. And we can talk about that. We could do it. We need to be role models. For those of us who are not afraid to talk about the end game, we have to be role models and begin that process for all of the people who love us.
Wow, that is fantastic. Well, folks, you've been hearing from Joy Loverde, who is the author of not only The Complete Elder Care Planner, but Who Will Take Care of Me When I'm Old, her newest book. And you can tell she's just a wealth of information. And so we're going to take a small break and come back with her in our second half. But I can tell you, these are all things that you need to be paying attention to. And if you're not there yet, you're not in that, 60, 70 situation, you need to take a look at this now because it's coming soon, folks. You're gonna need to be aware of it. So hang on. We'll be back with Joy in just a few minutes.
Hi, this is Dr. Gayle, and I wanted you to know I have a whole bunch of other things to offer you. If you go to spunkyoldbroad.com, you will see an array of SOB stuff for sale and all our latest products and additions. If you're interested in getting on TV, I have a brand new course, Get on TV. And if you want to start your own business, you'll want my SOB Guide to Business Success. I know you'll love them all. I guarantee it.